Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome back to Creation Conversations. It's been a busy day for me. I think it's been a busy day for most of us here, including John. As you can see, he's not with us. He is over at Jurassic Ark doing some research, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about that research in a little while because we had a question come in on our Standing for Truth stream that I did with John a couple of days ago. So if you haven't seen that, go and check that out. But we had a couple of suggestions come in, some of which we've already thought of, some of which we think we're going to implement, and some of which John is actually doing probably right now. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But of course, we're joined by Diane, we're joined by Sam. We've got a great program for you today. So exciting stuff. How are we all doing?
Well, thanks.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. It's been a pretty weary day for me. I've been over with teaching in a school for most of the day, going through some of the evidence of creation and fossils and thinking through critically and stuff. So it's sort of last day of term. So it was a little bit fun, a little bit hands-on. Here's some fossils and stuff, but also trying to get some of the students. We did basically, it was year 7, 8, and 9. And so he went through some nice stuff and, get them to think really critically about the world that they live in and about the way that they understand and perceive the world and a bit of the history. We dealt with a little bit of the stuff that we were dealing with over on Standing for Truth in the last couple of days, actually. So, yeah, it's great fun, but a full day and a couple of hours journey each way as well. So I'm a little bit weary, but it's good. We're okay. We've got a great program for you tonight as we go forward as well, and we're talking about all sorts of stuff and design and everything else as well. So yeah, it should be good. By the way, Sam, I can't actually tell from here, but I think our monetization is back up and running. I don't know if you're able to double check.
I am speedily wending my way to the Standing for Truth YouTube channel. Why would I go there? I want to go to the Creation Research YouTube channel.
It's a good place to go, but yeah, we're not interested in that right now.
we are monetized. We are monetized. It's all good. It's all
great stuff. Great stuff. Well, thank you for anybody who's watching, and that is brilliant. It's taken over a month now, actually, to get us back onto the out of YouTube jail, but we're finally there. We're monetized again, so yes, you can donate stuff. Yes, you can support us. Yes, you're able to help us keep doing these and keep bringing these broadcasts and programs out. All right, let's dive in with our sort of fossil feature, because we've also had a question sent through to us. In fact, Sam sent it through to me, and I've had 3 other people email us here in the UK, and I suspect John and the head office in Australia has had quite a number of people asking us about this brand new dinosaur find from the day that the asteroid hit the Earth. You know, the day that wiped out the dinosaurs? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment because, well, there's some interesting little things to discover with that. But let's have a look at some of our fossils from the museum collection here. I've got a couple of them tonight. This is our first one. They're both actually the same type of fossil. Let's hold it up so we get it nicely into focus so you can see. If I hold it sort of like that, that should get nicely into focus for you. There we go. Beautiful. Look at that.
That's good.
I wonder if you're able to recognize this fossil. It's quite an obvious one. It's a living fossil as well. I actually dug this up from Whitby, from a particular part of the cliff there called the Whitby plant bed. So there's a clue as to the type of fossil that it is. I mean, this is a small one, right? It just sort of kind of fits in my hand. But have a look at this one. Here we go. It's a much bigger one. In fact, hold it in front of me. There we go. You can just about see it. See it all the way across here. Absolutely beautiful. There's even some on the back as well. You can see some of the imprints. There we go. Some of the imprints on the back. Lovely. And yes, we lugged probably half a ton of rocks off the beach over several days of collecting and digging and finding fossils. Any idea what it is?
I
might recognize this.
I've got an idea. Can I guess?
Go on, you have a go.
Is it a fern?
No, it is not.
Oh!
So this is from Yorkshire in the UK, right, from Whitby. But Diane, you might be able to recognise it because it's actually an Australian plant.
Yes, it looks more like an Oricaria pine to me.
Yes. Sort of like a pine or a cycad or something like that. These ones are are most likely the cycads.
Yeah,
right?
so that small one there, that's a cycad.
Yeah. This
yes.
one's either one of the very large extinct cycads, or it's one of the big Onycaria trees, for sure. Yeah, it's probably definitely there's some cycads on the back here as well.
Yes.
Cycads are quite interesting. There was a news flash a little while back, it was a couple of years ago now, where the Isle of Wight had the first ever flowering cycad in 65 million years.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
It was, it was that in the news, because of course they blame it on climate change, but one thing you should pay attention to is the fact that even on an evolutionary timescale, 65 million years ago, it was the same climate as it was today. In fact, a lot of evidence says it was even warmer. So you have to find these little climate clues from climate change, and you can go to our fact file and stick in climate change if you want more information. But a few quick things about these. First of all, cycads are living fossils. The name that Charles Darwin gave them, they're supposed to be anomalies. Charles Darwin didn't particularly like them because they were, well, they're not particularly helpful to his theory of evolution. He said that his theory hinges on the organism or the creature or the plant not necessarily being the most strongest, but the one that's most adaptable to change. And of course, these plant fossils in the Jurassic, supposedly 170 to 200 odd million years old, and they haven't changed one bit. There's just simply no evolution in them in the slightest. So some really interesting thoughts that you can sort of delve into with these wonderful fossils. And in fact, both of these fossils come from a rather large display that we have here in the UK, our living fossils display. We have a whole display of them with cycads and seahorses and pipefish and nautilus and jellyfish, seashells, starfish, pecten shells, the sort of scallop shells, loads and loads of different examples of living fossils that you can come and find out the importance of them as well. So there's a nice little fossil feature for today. I thought what I'd do, see, when Sam sent me through the email and he sent me through the links to this BBC News report, I thought, well, perhaps if I have time, I'll be able to pull together a whole PowerPoint presentation about it. And I didn't have time when I was with the school kids all day. But what I thought I'd do, because it's actually interesting, because Diane, this is not a new discovery, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah,
no, we actually wrote about it in our newsletter when it first came out.
Yeah, it was back in April 2019 when this site was first discovered, and in fact this dinosaur was first discovered as well. So why has the BBC suddenly started talking about it again, and what evidence does it actually show in terms of asteroids and fossils and flooding and all that kind of stuff? So what I thought I'd do is share my screen and just run through some of the article here and point out a few key things. So hopefully you can see that up on the screen at the moment. There's the BBC News article, right? 1 day ago. It came out yesterday on the 7th of April 2022. And then up here you can see the original article. Incredible fossil may be first victims of dino killer asteroid, published on the 1st of April 2019. Now, it wasn't an April Fool's joke, it was a real article published by the rather well-known and fairly prestigious New Scientist. And this is actually an article which John and Diane published on the 11th of April 2019. It was published in our Evidence News, volume number 19. And you can see there's the description of what they found, a little bit about the reports, and just like any creation evidence news, a little bit of an editorial comment as well with some interesting stuff. So let me very quickly just bring this back up, and I'll just stick this up on the screen because you too can actually go and there we go. You can go and check out the link as well. Creation Research Evidence News. We can put this up in the chat in just a moment. So go and read the original article that John and Diane put out. What's that? 3 years ago now.
Yes,
so
almost
really,
exactly.
Almost exactly. Yeah. So really interesting article. But let's just run through some of the interesting things. So first of all, here's the headline, right? Fossil of dinosaur killed in asteroid strike found, scientists claim. Fossil of dinosaur killed in asteroid strike. All right, let's scroll down the article and see what they've actually found. I mean, there's the video, right, with a rather, I mean, that is a stunning, brilliantly preserved dinosaur leg. It is just remarkable. So for sure, this didn't take millions of years to form. For sure, this was a catastrophic burial. For sure, this was a very rapid, extremely rapid burial, almost mummifying the creature before permineralizing it, and it's got all the skin and the scales and everything intact. It's absolutely beautiful. It's from the Tanis fossil site here in the US state of North Dakota, right? And then they say here, but it's not just their exquisite condition that's turning heads, it's what these ancient specimens are purported to represent. The claim is that the Tanis creatures were killed and entombed on the actual day a giant asteroid struck Earth. The day 66 million years ago, when the reign of dinosaurs ended and the rise of mammals began. Now, it's interesting because if you go to the original article in New Scientist, it really says further down that there's not really that much evidence to be able to link this dinosaur find to the exact day that the asteroid strike found, and they still haven't found any particular information that would actually categorically link it to the day of an asteroid. Very few dinosaur remains have been found in rocks that record even the final few thousand years before impact. Of course, the interesting thing is, surely if the asteroid was the thing that wiped out the dinosaurs, and there's still a lot of scientists who disagree with that today, and even secular scientists, right? We're not just talking Earth creationists. There are a number of secular scientists who disagree with it, but surely you would be looking for dinosaurs having died after the asteroid impact, if that was the thing that wiped it out, not before, unless you're claiming that it killed all the dinosaurs off within just a few days and only the mammals were able to survive by some miracle or magic, if you want to put it another way. It's interesting. Why is this suddenly come back out in the news again, particularly on the BBC? Your answer is here. The BBC has spent 3 years filming at Tanis for a show to be broadcast on April 15th, narrated by Sir David Attenborough. In other words, the reason why this has hit the news is this is essentially an advert for the BBC, published by the BBC about a BBC a BBC documentary. That's all really it is. It's not a new discovery at all. All right, what can we learn from it? Let's have a little bit of a dig down. We see a fossil turtle that was skewered by a wooden stake. That sounds pretty catastrophic. And it's also a turtle buried next to a dinosaur. Remains of small mammals. So mammals were around for sure. The burrows they made, skin from a horned triceratops, the embryo of a flying pterosaur, and what appears to be a fragment from the asteroid impactor itself. Now, there's lots of other interpretations than just an asteroid impactor. Even the scientists who've published papers on this say that it's a bit contentious just automatically assuming that this is an asteroid impact. There's other things that could be at play here, including volcanoes, including other things. But certainly it's a remarkable site in terms of preservation. And then in particular, notice this. The North Dakota fossil site is a chaotic jumble. Now, we've had some criticism since our program with Standing for Truth saying that fossils are found beautifully ordered, they're not in a mess, there's no evidence of a worldwide flood at all. Well, I'm afraid you can see it right here, disagreeing with you. This site, this fossil site, is a chaotic jumble. There is no order to it. You've got turtles and fish and dinosaurs and wood all buried together. The remains of animals and plants, the article says, seems to have been rolled together into a sediment dump by waves of water set in a train by unimaginable earth tremors. Aquatic organisms are mixed in with the land-based creatures. Notice the reference to a water actually mixing these together. You're looking at evidence for a flood for sure. I mean, that's where the site is supposed to be. That's where Tanis is. That's a fair distance away, really. Could it have been from the asteroid, or could there be something else in play? Well, as you carry on looking down, they mention a few other interesting things as well, including this bit here. Here's the fossil. They weren't feathered. Animal whose leg has simply been ripped off really quickly. No evidence of leg disease, no obvious pathologies, no trace of the leg being scavenged or anything. The best idea we have is that the animal died more or less instantaneously. It died while being buried. Here is a lovely picture, artist's impression, artwork.
Mm.
The thinking is a water surge buried all the creatures in Tanis. Why? Because that's where the evidence leads. This was a flooding event, for sure. A massive flooding event which brought the fish and the turtles and everything else onto the land, swept over the land, and buried all the creatures extremely quickly, with such power actually ripping the leg off and everything else. All right? So this isn't a burial from the asteroid impact, it's a burial from a flood, for sure. And you can even see here, there are a number of scientists who are rather skeptical of this actually being on the day of the asteroid impact. So you see the difference between the title, like the headline, and what is actually being found here. It's possible that the animals had died before the impact. You've got things in their gills and everything else. Beautiful preservation of baby pterosaur eggs and dinosaur eggs and everything else inside it as well. So the one thing's for sure, a few things to take away. Number one, this isn't new. This is an old discovery that has already published on this discovery. Number two, all this really is a promo for the BBC. Number three, all of the evidence leads you to naturally conclude that it was a massive flooding event that actually caused this, produced this fossil site. Right? The question is, what caused the flooding event? Was it an asteroid? Well, even secular scientists are not convinced that it was an asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. A whole number of them signed an article not too long back saying that there just simply isn't enough evidence. It is a popular theory. It is not necessarily one, it's certainly not one that all of science holds a consensus on, and we're talking secular here, right? There's so many other things that can produce this volcanic ash layer rather than just meteorites, volcanoes, for instance. So there's definitely volcanic tissue and volcanic material here on this site. It could just be from a volcano, not necessarily from an asteroid. So yes, more evidence of Noah's flood for sure, no doubt about it. Buried together with flying creatures and swimming creatures and fish and turtles and dinosaurs and wood, all dumped down, all buried together in a chaotic mess. Definitely evidence for a global flood, for sure. So we'll finish, stop sharing this like that. There we go. There's a few comments and a few interesting little thoughts about this discovery, which is, it turns out, not particularly new anyway. So there we go. As requested, Sam.
Yes, it's interesting. That is a particularly catastrophic sort of deposit, but in quite often, if you read the original reports about various fossils, the report will be about one particular fossil with a lot of exquisite detail about it, and that's fine. But often they will have, this fossil was found in a deposit that also had sort of fish and turtles or land plants or whatever. So mixed deposits are actually quite common. It's just they tend not to come to the notice of the general public, because most of the reports, people are describing one particular fossil that was found within this big deposit. And that they'll go into all the details and then spend ages drawing up evolutionary trees, but that's another story. But mixed deposits are quite common. They're not rare.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why we love at Creation Research to take people out on field trips themselves to show them the evidence, because as soon as you go out and start digging up and looking at it, particularly in the Jurassic and the Cretaceous deposits, that it is a jumbled mess. That's the only way you can really describe it, is as a chaotic mess. It is just so full of mixed creatures, organisms, trees, plants, mixed with fish and dinosaurs and deep sea creatures and everything. It's just an absolute chaotic mess. And that's one of the things, actually, while I think about it, that we'll be doing on this event here, the Rocks Cry Out UK Fossil Convention, 26th of September to the 1st of October. Yeah. You can see Charmouth and Lyme Regis behind us. So we'll certainly be going there, as well as 2 or 3 other places along the Jurassic coast, and actually digging up the fossils and looking at the chaotic jumbled mess that it is and seeing the evidence for yourself. So we love taking people out on field trips. In fact, the school that I was at today, and I was teaching in a school, going through some of this evidence with the students there, year 7 to 9, and the head teacher said it'd be great to actually get these students out into the field doing this research with you. And I said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's get them out and do a field trip in the area. So we should be going and doing a field trip with this school in sort of May, June time. So pray for that. And it's great to actually get involved with the schools. It's great to get involved with the schools and do some real evidence and be able to teach them about the truth of God's word as well. So great stuff. Excuse me. Before we get into the main topic, because Diane's going to start by talking about, or giving us, our topic tonight is design overall, right? Diane's going to start by giving us some examples of design. But before we do that, Sam, did you have a little sort of, announcement, I suppose, or update, or whatever you want to call it? You're a bit, we can't hear you at all, Sam. You're not muted, but it does say that your internet is 0 out of 10. So I don't know if that could quite possibly have something to do with it, I think. Tell you what, then, what we'll do, let's Diane, let's do your section. Oh, hang on. Sam's joined us.
Sam's disappeared. Now he's come back.
No, I haven't got you, Sam. Your connection is 10 out of 10 now, so full marks on that, but we still can't hear you. We had this happen last week, I think. Now, can't hear you, completely gone, no. Sam, I'm afraid. What we'll do then is let's Diane, let's do your section, because we're talking about design tonight, right? Oh, Sam, back.
Are we good?
Hey, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Yes, I don't know what happened there.
I have no idea what happened there.
No idea. Oh, well, there we go. Fun and games. Games.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, yeah, no, you do your section first, Sam. Your announcement, your update, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll move on to Diane's bit.
Okay, no. All right, then. Okay, so everyone, hello. Welcome to Creation Conversations. A little bit of an update from me in regards to the Genesis project. So, so that's our sort of initial sneak sort of preview of the beginning of the film anyway, so I hope you enjoy that. So we've got a little bit of an update on what is going to be happening going forward. So we're going to start, hopefully speeding things up a little bit more now that we sort of past Christmas, past New Year. I think probably Easter may get in the way, but after that we should be fairly sort of straight and narrow to get this done. We've come across some new technology that we can use to access better graphics and rendering. So if you don't know what rendering is, it's basically what the computer does to make things look really nice on a computer. So to give you a little bit of an idea as to what we're dealing with, I'm just going to throw up some pictures. Believe it or not, these are not photographs. These are real-time renders. So these are rendered as you are watching on, well, these photos aren't, but the people who've made these have created them in aims to show off what is possible with this new technology. So the aim is to get it basically photo real on a computer. It's using a specific new lighting engine, which is called Lumen, which is revolutionary. It uses real-time light rendering. So basically that means that the sun appears as it would in real life. So look at these. They're absolutely beautiful, stunning detail. And all of these are created on a computer in real time, which is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful pictures. And we've actually got a little bit of a demo for you as to how this can actually help us, and you can get an idea as to how powerful this actually is. This is a demo that was put together by Weta Digital, who've done a lot of film graphics. They did a lot of work on the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Very, very high-tech CGI, and they know what they're doing. And they've used this new technology, which is called Unreal Engine 5, which was released this week, to create a real-time demo. So this is not pre-rendered. This is not rendered for hours on end on computer farms and then played back. This is recorded live in engine. So take a look. So there we go. So that is that just gives you an idea of what is actually this engine is actually capable of. All of the rocks and all the vegetation and things like that have used technology called photogrammetry, which means they use photographs, so pictures taken in real life, and they take multiple pictures around an object. And then what they do is they put that into a computer and it creates what's called a digital asset. So that is a 3D object that you can move around, put into a scene, a bit like a prop or set dressing on a film. And it looks like real life because it is real life. That's the new technology that's being given out, and it's available for free as well. So Unreal Engine is completely for free to use. All of the photogrammetry assets are free as well. So this comes as no cost to us. It's completely free to use. So hopefully we can use this to create some really, really good, interesting shots that are accurate to the biblical description, which is something that we've struggled with a little bit because we've been dealing with a lot of footage that's already out there of the world today, which doesn't necessarily paint an accurate description of real life in the biblical account. But that is my update. I will come off full screen. There we go.
That's pretty spectacular, and it's great to have obviously Sam on board as well, doing this kind of stuff. So keep supporting us, because even though that's free, there's so many other things which aren't, that need to be brought together. So carry on supporting us where you can, and we really do appreciate all of that, especially now that we've monetized again and super chat and everything else is already. In fact, I think we had a donation come through.
Yeah, we did from Iron Matt. He sent in a pear emoji thing with the hand outstretched thing. It's gone because I reloaded, but yeah, thank you very much.
I think there it is. There we are.
There we go. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. We really do appreciate that. All right. So our main topic tonight that we're talking about is design. In particular, we're talking about how to recognize design, and I've got some interesting objects to show you as we go on a little bit later. But Diane's going to start this evening by giving us some examples of design, especially from times where even secular scientists have been left with no choice but to admit that something has been designed. So, Diane, over to you. Take it away.
Yes, thank you. So let's. Can we go to my screen? Yes, that's good. Yes, well, they say that you can't recognize design in the natural world. It all just got here by evolution. There's no evidence for design, and therefore there's no evidence for a designer. And that is actually their real problem. They don't want to recognize a designer, but they certainly can recognize design. So let's look at a couple of examples, or 3 examples, where the word design just comes out because there's no other options. Now, how about this one? Butterflies shine brighter by design. And And this was from one of the news services that we regularly look through. African butterflies have light-emitting wings that share a trick with high-tech light-emitting diodes. That's LEDs. Now, we have these all over the place now. There's been this wonderful revolution in lighting, so that we now have light-emitting diodes which use a lot less power and give you a lot more flexibility in terms of the light and color. Now, we didn't make this up, that headline. It's actually the headline that was in the news service that's associated with the journal Nature. And that was their headline, Butterflies Shine Brighter by Design. And it goes on to describe a study of particularly beautiful butterfly that has these very iridescent patches on its wings. And they really are lovely. And the BBC picked this up and said when scientists developed an efficient device for emitting light, they hadn't realized that butterflies had been using the same method for 30 million years. So butterflies beat scientists by 30 million years, that they reckon. And this was a comment made by one of the scientists who actually was involved in this study. The way light is extracted from the butterfly's system, in other words, how light is reflected from these beautiful, bright, shimmering scales that butterflies have. The way light is extracted from the butterfly system is more than an analogy. In other words, it's not just something similar, right? It is all but identical in design to the LED, to the light-emitting diode. So in other words, when they looked at the microscopic structure of these beautiful iridescent scales, they found something that looked exactly like a man-made designed light-emitting diode. And then and this is what they actually wrote in their scientific paper. This biological system shares many design features, right? Yes, design features with high emission LEDs. So they cannot avoid using the word design. It's just there. But whose design is it? Well, as this comment was actually printed in the New Zealand Herald, it's amazing that butterflies have evolved such sophisticated design features which can so exquisitely manipulate light and color. Nature's design and engineering is truly inspirational. Now, remember that last sentence, right? Nature's design and engineering and inspirational. Because here we are leaving the scientists just say, oh, well, we're just very sort of, we just stick to the facts. But then they come out with statements like this when they're speaking to the general newscast. You know, we're not religious or anything. So let's look at another example. Do you recognize these? Sam or Joseph, do you recognize?
I do. I used to stick those on my nose.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. I mean, perhaps I should clarify. I believe I'm right in saying they've got something sticky in the middle.
Right.
If you peel off the sides of it, you can stick it on your nose and wear it like a sort of like a horn.
Yeah. They're the sycamore.
No, not the fact I used to like just sellotape these to my face and just walk around. And beautiful.
Helicopter seeds, we used to call them.
Yes, that's right. Yes, they're maple seeds, and they are commonly called helicopter seeds because they do fly in a sort of way. Now you've got two seeds there which are stuck together, and when that dries out and comes off the tree, they're maple seeds. As you can see there's two stuck together. Those two actually separate, and then they don't just fall straight down off the tree. They actually do rotate like a helicopter, and which means that they have a lot of lift. So they rotate in the air and they can fly quite a long way from their parent tree. Now, that's actually quite a good thing because it means that the seed then lands in a place away from the shade of the parent tree. And so it's got room to grow and it's got light. So this is a really clever piece of design. And some scientists decided, well, let's have a look at these and see what is generating what they called aerodynamic lift. In other words, what is enabling these seeds to rotate like a helicopter. And if the wind is blowing enough, they can move for a whole kilometre. That's about 5/8 of a mile. So it's quite a long way just by rotating in the air. And so they did this really clever aerodynamic study. They started off by building a 10 times scale model and immersed that in oil and then rotated it on a robotic arm. So there's a lot of clever engineering just involved in doing this test. And what that enabled them to do was to study the flow pattern in this oil. And what it showed was that the leading edge showed a lot of vortices. They're like sort of miniature swirling whirlpools. And they thought, well, maybe this is the key to how these things actually manage to rotate and move in the wind so much. So they then had to test some real seeds. Of course, it's all very well to do it with their clever model. So they did test some real seeds in a wind tunnel, and they confirmed that this rotation movement and the shape of the seeds was generating these leading edge vortices. And this was the title of their paper: Leading Edge Vortices Elevate Lift of Auto-Rotating. So that's the helicopter part in the helicopter seeds, that they rotate by themselves, auto-rotating plant seeds. And they wrote this in their paper: the enhanced aerodynamic performance. In other words, these are just so clever in the way they float in the wind and rotate. The enhanced aerodynamic performance of auto-rotating seeds could inspire the design of more effective auto-rotating vehicles. Now, if they do manage to do that, just think of what was needed in order to even study this, let alone design some more effective auto-rotating vehicles. And the science news reports often ask other scientists to comment on what's been found. And this was one comment that was made: people don't give plants enough credit for smarts. Now who's smart in this whole system, right? Do we give the credit to the maple seeds or to the maple plant? Well, we don't do that any more than we give the credit for designing the 10 times model and the robot arm that they had to use to build their model. That took a lot of clever engineering. Here it is in miniature, working the same way. And they're saying, oh, well, it was the plant that was smart. I think there's a bit of a problem there, right? So let's move on to another example. How about some inspired mechanical properties? Now here we have a picture of a couple of rather small and obscure things. We think of design as being something that's big and clever and pretty, but let's look at a couple of obscure examples. Scientists have found the strongest natural material known to humans. This was reported in one of the other regular news services that we look at. So what do you think that might be? What do you think might be the toughest biological material? Just think about what's the hardest substance in your own body.
Is that like enamel or?
Yeah, yes, that's right. Tooth enamel, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the hardest substance. So which creature has the hardest teeth? Well, you might think of something like a shark or a crocodile, but in fact, it's this little creature that's in the photo here. That's a limpet. Limpets.
I was going to go for an elephant or something.
Yeah. Yes. That's right. But anyway, these humble little limpets actually hold the record for the world's toughest teeth. And now we normally associate limpets with, we had the term stick like a limpet because we see them at low tide when they are actually exposed on the rocks, and during low tide, when they are actually exposed, they just do not move, and it's extremely hard to get them off the rocks. So that's where we get that expression from. But when they are covered with water, they do actually move, not very fast, and they graze on the algae that's covering the rocks there. So that they will just sort of cruise around, and they have a little spiky set of teeth that actually grazes on the algae on the rock. Now that means they have to have particularly tough teeth if you're going to make a living out of scraping algae off rocks. And they found in their teeth was this particular mineral called goethite. And if you recognize that name there, yes, it is the same name as the philosopher Goethe. And this is a particularly hard mineral, but it's not just the hardness of the mineral that gives them the toughness to scrape algae off the rock. And so this was the photos from the study of limpet teeth. Now the teeth are all lined up in a long string up the top there as in a structure called a radula, and you can see they're very, very sharp. And once you get down to the microscopic size, you can see they are a mixture of fibers embedded into a matrix. And the scientists who studied this explains limpets need high strength teeth to rasp over rock surfaces and remove algae for feeding when the tide is in. So that's how they survive. We discovered that fibers of goethite are just the right size to make up a resilient composite structure. So notice it's not just the substance that's involved, it's having the right size and having a resilient composite structure. That means the structure is made out of two different substances mixed together, and that's very common in biological things, and it's becoming more common in a lot of modern technology as well, making composite structures. But it requires a lot of design in terms of combining two very, very different substances to get a desired result. And this is what they wrote in their report: limpet teeth made of goethite reinforcing fiber and chitin matrix. So that's the matrix that those fibers are embedded in, right? Highlighting the structural resemblance to a fiber reinforced composite material with an average fiber length of approximately 20 nanometers, which is very, very, very tiny. So that's why you've got these microscopic pictures that they had to use, right? So again, it's the composition that gives these teeth their particular toughness. It's not just the minerals, and the chitin matrix. Chitin is the sort of exoskeleton that you find in a lot of crustaceans. But the mixture gives you a much better, a much tougher substance. And they went on to say this considerable tensile strength, that tensile means the ability to resist being torn apart. The tensile strength of limpet teeth is attributed to high mineral volume fraction of reinforcing goethite nanofibers. Okay, so you've heard of nanotechnology, right? That's looking at technology down at the actual molecular level. With diameters below a defect control critical size. Now get this at the end here, suggesting that natural design, again, they cannot avoid using that word, because when you see substances that are so well organized, and when they're put together, they make a substance that has properties that the individual substances don't have until they're put together. So natural design in limpet teeth is optimized towards theoretical strength limits. So this, they are admitting, this has been designed to the limits, these limpet teeth. And this was a comment that one of the researchers made again to the science news sites. Nature is a wonderful source of inspiration for structures that have excellent mechanical properties. Now, again, notice how they say, oh, we're just cold, hard facts, but now they're talking about inspiration. When really they should be worshipping the Creator who made the heaven and the earth and all that is in them. And if we can just... and then they went on to say, well, all the things we observe around us, such as trees and the shells of sea creatures and limpet teeth studied in this work, have evolved to be effective in what they do. So in one stage, they're saying, oh, these are just magnificent. They're designed so well. And then they're saying, oh, well, it all happened by evolution. So it doesn't make, they're being quite inconsistent. So they should be worshipping the Creator, but that's the very thing that they're trying to avoid, even though they cannot avoid seeing actual design. And if we can just end there and go back to the...
we've lost a Sam somewhere down the line. Never mind. Thanks for that, Diane. That was a really great introduction to our program this evening. I'll just have a quick look and see if any questions have come in. Just a reminder, folks, that you can ask questions at any point, and even if we don't get to them in the stream, we have a specific Q&A, which we're probably due for one at some point. We'll probably do it after Easter now, where we will deal with any questions that we haven't dealt with on the night if we don't have time. So we go back through all of our records and deal with all the questions as well. So Sam was raptured. I'm not sure he was quite. He's come back again now.
I wasn't raptured. No, it's fine. No, I was needed elsewhere for a second. Don't worry. I was sort of like edging in, just like, oh no. Oh.
Slowly, yeah. All right. We have had a couple of questions come through, not related to what you've been speaking about, Diane, but you might as well deal with them while we're here. And then we can move on to my second session. So remember, keep the questions coming, folks. We've had a couple of questions come from Ravi. We've got this one, which says, how long did it take God to flood the earth? Was it 40 days? And then finally, we've got another one from Ravi, which says, I'm wondering how quickly land animals would have experienced the rising waters. So I'll give one or two thoughts, and of course, Diane, feel free to jump in. In terms of the first question, which was here, how long did it take God to flood the earth? Was it 40 days? The 40 days reference comes from 40 days and 40 nights of rain. Right, so there was precipitation, there was falling water on the earth, whether that was from a dense upper cloud system or canopy. There's sort of different ideas regarding that. I certainly think that there was a protective layer of water in the atmosphere. Whether it was quite an entire water canopy is another thing, but certainly there was a much denser atmosphere. We know that just from the records of the atmosphere that we have in the fossil record. So 40 days and 40 nights of rain. However, if you read your Bible and go through the chronology of the Genesis flood, in a sense, looking through it step by step, you'll see that the water was rising and it continued rising until day 150. Now, you have to remember that the bulk of the water that was flooding the earth did not necessarily come from the rain. It certainly rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and there was a lot of water coming from that. But the key phrase is the fountains of the great deep burst open. Now, there's two major interpretations of this. One of this is subterranean water literally bursting up out of the ground, and there certainly is plenty of subterranean water, and you've got plenty of that in Australia, Diane, with the artesian wells and the Great Artesian Basin and everything else. So it's quite likely it could be subterranean water bursting forth. But also, you've definitely got references to what we would now refer to as something along the line of plate tectonics. Whether the tectonics are moving apart or whether they're moving up and down is still a subject of debate even among scientists today, but there was certainly enough water on the earth to actually cover the earth with water. You know this because the earth has been covered with water at 2 points during its history. The first one was on day 1, 2, and 1, 2, and half of day 3 of creation. The second time was at Noah's flood. So the earth started out covered in water. God caused the land to rise up out of the water, and he could have very easily just caused the water to come back up and flood over the land again. So the waters continued rising until day 150. That's my first thoughts on those. My second thoughts on the next question, which is here, how quickly would land animals have experienced the rising waters? The only indication we're given from scripture is that by day 150, when the waters stopped rising, all creatures that breathed air through their nostrils that lived on the land were dead. All creatures that air-breathing, land-dwelling creatures that were not on the ark were dead. All humans that were not on the ark were dead. So certainly it was 150, by day 150, they were dead. They certainly experienced the rising waters. In terms of how quick it took to come on, we can get some ideas by looking at geology and looking at the way that water behaves today. Bearing in mind, you'd have also had tides at play. So the moon was still there, tides were still at play. They would have still caused fluctuations backwards and forwards. We know that water tends to flow in, find the lowest area. So higher places would have been one of the last places quite likely to go, higher land. You would have had the fact that definitely surges in the water. If you remember, if you've watched our Standing for Truth program, which we did in the last couple of days, we talked a lot about the surges of water flowing over the land. So that was as a play as well. So we know by day 150, all life was dead. So the animals had all experienced the water, if you like, by day 150. In terms of from the start of the flood, I mean, it would have been different depending on where you are on the planet, as the waters came in, as the tides went in and went out. And it was likely the tides and this surging of water that actually ended up allowing certain animals to survive, to run around, to be able to scavenge other animals, to be able to leave their footprints before the next tide came along and actually buried them. 150 days is still a fair amount of time in order to raise up floodwaters and rip up land masses from the water and redeposit them, and so on and so forth. But any thoughts from you, Diane?
Yes, it was probably a mix of times. Some things would have been wiped out straight away, like that deposit that the BBC are promoting at the moment. If they were close to where any of these eruptions happened from the fountains of the Great Deep, others that were further away from those original sites may have survived longer times. And we have interesting fossils that are interpreted as footprints of dinosaurs running away from other dinosaurs. We've actually got, we made a copy of one of these at our Jurassic Ark site. So you have, we've got a lot of trackways or footprints. These are sometimes called stampedes because you've got a lot of them. And the story is, there was this big hungry dinosaur that was chasing a whole lot of little ones. Yes, they probably were running away, but it was probably from water that was flooding in. So if they were further away from the actual sites of these sort of eruptions, they would have lasted longer, but certainly by 150 days, so what's that, 5 months, everything was gone. So some things would have died out straight away because they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, like being on the edge of a volcano or an earthquake or something like that. Others would have survived longer times as the waters washed over the land. You would have had tsunamis from the uplifts. And so they did have a chance to try and run away, but eventually the water got them all. By the time the 150 days, as it says, the waters prevailed for 150 days. So it's a matter of some instantly, some of them maybe survived for months, but eventually they all went.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. All right. Thanks for that, Dan. I don't think we've had any other questions come in. So we'll move on to my little session. We're sort of on the hour mark. A reminder, keep your questions coming, because we will be able to deal with them today, most likely. And if we don't get a chance to deal with them, we will use them in our Q&A special. We've also got a few questions from the Standing for Truth program, which we did, which we'll try and get to in a little bit of time as well. But for now, what I'm going to do is just have a little bit of a talk about recognizing design and some of the principles behind it, right? As well as using a couple of little examples from our creation research repertoire before we sort of finish and move on to some questions and so on and so forth. So I've got some rather interesting things to hold up and show you. First of all, I've got this. It's an artifact, by the way. I don't know if you can kind of work out what it is by sight. Let's see if we can hold it up and get it kind of into focus. If we get it close enough to the camera, that might just about work. There we go. Lovely.
Yeah,
any ideas what this might be? It's quite a nice artifact.
Can I take another guess? I might be putting my reputation on the line here, but is it a spearhead?
Oh, well, close enough. It's definitely a weapon of a kind. It's what we would refer to as a hand axe. In particular, it's an Anchulian hand axe. Now, you know it's a hand axe for a very specific reason. If you look on there, can you see the little sort of bulge around here?
Yes.
A little sort of indentation. Okay, this has been designed, and designed is the key word. It's been designed to be held in the right hand. You will find it very difficult to find a comfortable position to actually hold it in your left hand. However, if you hold it in your right hand, the little sort of bed of your thumb there fits into that slot brilliantly nicely, and you've even got a nice little handle to hold it, so you'd be using it like this. Now, this is something that we've found in a lot of these Anchulian hand axes, these designed hand axes. They've been specifically designed for a left or a right hand. Most of the time, it's the right hand. Very rarely, it's the left hand. Okay, so this is a hand axe, a hand tool, a stone tool of some description. We've got another one here, which is also a really nice one. In fact, not only has this got a little indent, I don't know if you can just about see this little indent in the side here, which is designed again for this sort of bit of your thumb here. You can actually see where it's been used so much, and as they've come down to hit it, their fingers have slipped and they've actually polished and worn down the side of this hand axe. That's a really, really lovely example of a hand axe. And then finally, I've got a rock that is the result of an explosion. This is out of a quarry. In fact, it's got a sharp edge on it. It could probably do a bit of damage if you, tried to saw into something with that. But the question we're talking about tonight, or the thing we're talking about tonight, is design. We're looking at the question of design, and we're asking the question, how can you tell that this hand axe and this hand axe has been designed and this rock has not? This is the result of an explosion from a quarry. In fact, if you want to go one step further, here's, well, it's not quite a hand axe, but this is an axe that you could use to chop a tree down. It's a Stone Age axe. In fact, this is a modern replica, but it's built in exactly the same way, using the same techniques that you would have used to build a hand axe like this. It's made out of flint. Very famous flint from Grimes Graves is a well-known prehistoric, if you want to use that term, flint mine. It's been beautifully carved, so it's got a wonderfully sharp edge. It's been set into a yew-wood handle. It's been bound with this deerskin twine, and it's been glued together using pine pitch. This is probably the same kind of pine pitch that Noah would have used. And yes, you could literally chop a tree down with this axe. Now, what is this axe actually made of? I mean, it's made of wood. It's made out of a bit of deerskin, it's got some pine pitch, and it's some stone. Now, there's no denying, everybody can recognize straight away that this hand axe has been designed. And in fact, I know the person who actually designed it, right? His name is Will Lord. He's a very well-known Stone Age man, really, around here. He kind of does a lot of reenacting. He is brilliant at mapping stone tools and designing stone tools and doing all sorts of brilliant and wonderful things with stone tools and Bronze Age swords and all this kind of stuff. And he's a very, very clever craftsman. And he's been able to design a stone axe that is actually useful. You could chop a tree down. This is the replica. These ones are the real deal. How would you recognize that these are designed? What is the major difference between these hand axes and this stone from a quarry? Even though they both have a sharp edge and even though they both could be used for the same thing. Well, the difference is this stone contains fully natural properties. This hand axe doesn't. Okay, what are we looking for? If you're looking for evidence of design, you're looking for an object that has properties that do not come from the materials that it is made of. Now, in the case of this rock that's been created by a explosion, it contains no properties that aren't simply found naturally. I mean, frost fracture could have created this. An explosion creates this. No design creates this. It's a purely natural rock, and you can get sharp edges of the rock naturally, just because of the way that it splits, because of the way that the curvature plane goes. However, could you get a rock perfectly naturally that's got all of the perfect edge, that's been shaped into a specific design, and even has a specific handle to it, so it can only be held in the right hand? Now, this contains properties that do not come from the material that it's made of. Therefore, it's designed. This hand axe, I mean, there's no way in the world that even, given as many million years as you want, that a tree will fall down in the right way so that it will wedge itself into a rock that has been carved in the right way and filled itself up with pine pitch and bound itself around with deerskin twine so that you can actually take it and chop a tree down. This hand axe contains properties that do not come from the materials that it's made of. Therefore, this hand axe has been designed. You see, the one thing we like to remind people is that everybody is capable of recognizing design, however, very few people are able to define it. So what we're going to try and do over the next little while is help you actually define this design so that we can apply it to the world around us. Now, I'm just going to pull up some PowerPoint slides here, so that we can run through a few practical examples. That should be up on the screen now. If you can just confirm for me, Sam, that we can see it all.
Yeah, you're all good.
Yeah.
You're all good.
Good. A reminder about our websites there, creationresearch.net. You can find all of the information that we talk about tonight on there, as well as at creationresearch.live and all the links for there. So go and check that out. A reminder as well that the super chat and the donation thing on our YouTube channel is now up and running as well. So go and check that out. Another resource, which is sort of pertinent to some of the stuff we've been talking about tonight, is The Rocks Cry Out. Particularly if you're based in the UK, but it's actually applicable really anywhere. What you do is you get the book. It takes you step by step through the geology of a particular area. However, it comes with a free video as well on our website. So even if you don't live in the area or you don't live in the UK, you can simply buy the book, you can watch the video, and you can still get some really good content out of it. So what we've been talking about earlier with our dinosaur discovery, right? The kind of things that I showed you, this is the kind of stuff you need to be looking for. What does the evidence really say? These books will really help train you really into recognizing these particular issues. So you can find them all on our websites. You can get them particularly from our UK store as well, and you can find out the free videos. They're on our YouTube channel as well as on the rockscryout.co.uk. So go and check that out. Okay, a theme, Psalm 119 verse 160. Thy word is true from the very beginning. This is a key thing we need to keep in mind as we look forward with this issue of design and everything else as well. And good reminder of Paul's warning to the Apostle Paul's warning to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 20, beware of false science, it leads you astray. Now, I was using this Bible verse with the school kids that I was teaching earlier today, and I had to remind them it's really very useful to actually learn a little bit of Latin and Greek, particularly in relating certain things to the world around you, because if you open up your old King James Bible in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 20, it uses that word science. Beware of science falsely so called. And you'll find that the word science is simply the old Greek word for knowledge. Beware of false science, beware of false knowledge, beware of false information, it will lead you astray. Of course, the flip reverse of that is that true science points you to Christ. Oh, I won't save you, but it is the big flashing beacon pointing you towards Jesus Christ. So make sure you actually are able to properly define and recognize false science versus true science. And it really comes down to this question: who is your authority? Is it God's unchanging word, or is it man's constantly evolving theories? A little bit of a challenge for you tonight. Okay, a question. What is hydrogen? Again, I love giving this question to students because they come up with wonderful answers like, oh, it's the lightest element, it's the most common element, it's only made up of 2 parts where most atoms and elements are made up of 3, right? You know, your protons, neutrons, and electrons. It's extremely explosive and all this kind of stuff. Of course, if you are a secular atheist evolutionist, then hydrogen is something far more spectacular. Hydrogen is a colorless, odorless gas. It's just hot air that, given enough time, can actually turn into people. A colorless, odorless gas that, given enough time, can turn into every physical, material, and organic and non-organic thing in the universe. You see, the atheistic solution is that when time is the hero of the plot, God is simply not needed. He's not required. I mean, let's face it, if your naked singularity, given enough time, can turn into every element and turn into every structured and designed and undesigned thing here in the universe, then they've got no need for a God in the slightest. And we actually dealt with some of this in our history lesson we did with Standing for Truth. The origin of deep time, the origin of evolution, where the idea really came from, and the whole anti-God basis of it. And the argument was, throw enough time at it and anything can actually happen. Okay, what is evolution? Here it is. In the beginning, there was a big bang. Molecules, all by themselves, came out of the naked singularity and diversified from hydrogen into other molecules. Molecules came together all by themselves to form microbes. Microbes continued to evolve and change all by themselves in order to form monsters like the dinosaurs, and then you continue to evolve until we get man today and beyond. From nature to nurture, evolution all by itself. Here's another example. Death and struggle over millions of years, amoebas become ape-like, become man, all by themselves. There is no intelligence required. And evolution is anything that can happen by itself. Only natural processes are involved, and no outside intelligence is required. This is your definition of evolution. Of course, the thing we like to remind people is if you're looking for evidence of design, if you're looking for evidence of creation, you're not looking for evidence of time, you're actually looking for evidence of a process that can actually create things before they simply fall apart. Some practical examples. What is a guitar? It's a 100% musical object made out of 100% non-musical wood. I mean, if you walk up to a tree and you start strumming it, you'll find it difficult to get all the notes and the chords that you would get out of a guitar, right? And yet it's made of the same thing. A guitar is a 100% musical object made out of 100% non-musical wood. Somebody who existed before the tree, or before the guitar rather, somebody who was not part of the guitar, somebody who was cleverer than the guitar, actually made wood do what wood does not do by itself, craft itself into a musical instrument. Okay, recognizing creation. Dr. Krista Carlo from Harvard University, who was debating John Mackay, who is of course not with us tonight, but has said this rather interesting quote when challenged about what a creation is. How would you actually recognize a creation if it came up and slapped you in the face? The answer is a creation is something that cannot happen by itself, according to Dr. Krista Carlos. Okay, so when we're looking for evidence of a creation, when we're looking for evidence of a design, and we've looked at lots of examples of design tonight with what Diane's been talking about, we're looking for evidence of something that cannot happen by itself, as opposed to evolution, which can happen by itself. The principle, a guitar has the end product of the guitar rather, has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made of, the wood, therefore it is a design. Somebody who existed before the guitar, somebody who's not part of the guitar, and somebody who is far smarter than the guitar actually made the wood do what wood does not do by itself. A creation is something that cannot happen by itself. The end product has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made from. Now we've got a formula for design. We're looking for evidence of a product which has properties which do not come from the actual physical materials it's made of. And you are already brilliant at recognizing this kind of stuff. And a creation always proves that somebody who is not part of it, somebody who existed before it, and somebody who is far smarter than it actually created something. So some more practical examples, ones that you can easily recognize. What is a car? A car is a 100% moving object made out of 100% non-moving parts. I mean, it's metal and oil, and it's some rubber which comes from trees, and you've got some copper in there which comes from the ground, and you've got some glass which comes from silica, which comes from sand, and all by itself, those individual components do not make a moving object that is a car. However, put them together in the right order, put them together in the right pattern, put them together by an intelligent creator, and you end up with a product that has properties that do not come from the material constituent parts. It's a 100% moving object made out of 100% non-moving parts. What's a jumbo jet? It's a 100% flying object made out of 100% non-flying parts. Again, the individual components do not by themselves inherently contain the properties of a jumbo jet. It requires somebody with intelligence, or in the case of a jumbo jet, lots of people with intelligence, to actually put them together in the right order and to craft and create and turn them into something that can fly. All right, let's step it up a gear. What's a computer code? I mean, I'm using a computer code right now in my laptop in front of me. Sam's using it, Diane's using it, most of you are probably using it if you're watching this on a phone or a laptop or a computer. What is a computer code? Well, it's ones and noughts. A computer code is a 100% meaningful result made from a 100% meaning-free source. Ones and noughts do not mean anything in themselves unless an intelligent person has assigned meaning to them. And the standard meaning that's assigned to them is 1 and 0, so 1 or nothing. Yet if you take those ones and those noughts and you put them together in such a way that you actually code for something, you then sell Microsoft and become a billionaire, like Mr. Bill Gates did. You see, a computer code that's inside this computer or anything else is a 100% meaningful result made from 100% meaning-free source. It requires intelligence to actually construct it. Remember what a creation is. A creation is something that cannot happen by itself. A computer code cannot happen by itself. It requires parameters and it requires properties which do not come from the inherent materials of the ones and the noughts. In fact, the even creation of the ones and the noughts requires intelligence in the first place. It is a creation for sure. The end product has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made of, therefore it is a creation. And therefore, you pay the creator his due. That's why I have a little symbol here on my laptop that says Microsoft Windows 10. Interesting. It's paying the creator his due. That's why when you drive the car down the road and it says Ford on the front of it, you're paying the creator its due. Make sure that you pay the creator his due for the design that he has made. That's why we have copyright laws in this country. That's why we have court case after court case over, all this copyright infringement and so on and so forth. All right, step it up another gear. What is DNA? It's a 100% coded substance made of 100% non-coded parts. DNA is made up of sugars, it's made up of phosphates, made up of carbons. Most of that you probably ate for your breakfast, and it didn't contain any intelligent coding. Yet put it together in the right way, put it together in the correct pattern, put it together under design, and DNA creates a 100% coded substance made from 100% non-coding parts with an inbuilt mechanism to make copies of itself. I mean, that'd be wonderful if a car could do that. The original DNA shows all the evidence of a pre-existent intelligent creator. In fact, DNA is designed to not evolve. Yes, you heard me correctly. DNA is designed to not evolve. Evolution, one of the driving factors of evolution is mutations. Mutations mixed with natural selection are the two driving factors, supposedly, of evolution. Yet your DNA has an inherent inbuilt mechanism to stop itself from evolving. Now, yes, we live in a fallen world, and yes, mutations do happen all the time, and some of those mutations can be absolutely catastrophic, but the reality is there is an inbuilt mechanism to stop you from mutating. You are designed to not evolve. In fact, you are designed to reproduce after your kind, just as God told you were back in the beginning, just as God told every other creature and plant and organism that they were back in the beginning. The original DNA shows all the evidence of a pre-existent, intelligent creator. Remember what a creation always proves. Somebody who is not part of it, somebody who existed before it, and somebody who is far, far smarter than it actually made it do what it doesn't do by itself. Therefore, you pay the creator his due. Who is the creator? The creator is Jesus Christ. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Implication, the Word is not only an eternal Word, he is equal to God, and he is God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through the Word, and without the Word nothing was made that was made. So the Word, who is not only equal to God, who is God, he is also the creator of all things. And skip down to verse 14 of John chapter 1, and the Word, who is equal to the God, who is the creator of all things, became flesh and dwelt among us, and his name is Jesus Christ. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus Christ is the creator of all things. And you see this reiterated throughout Scripture, both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Just think of Colossians 1:16. Not only were all things made by Jesus Christ, they were made for Jesus Christ. And in him all things consist, all things are held together. He's not only our creator, it wasn't only created for him, he's also the sustainer of all things. He's the one who holds all things together. Well, I'm just going to run through a couple of examples now, pull up another presentation here very quickly. I'm just going to run through a couple of examples, interesting examples, that also show evidence of design and also link it back in to what we were talking about earlier. Let's do this one here. Oops. If it works, if it wants to work. Yeah, there it is. Right. Has that come up on the screen yet? No.
No, not yet.
There we go.
Yes.
That's excellent. Again, a reminder of Creation Research UK and the fact that you can also donate to us now. So keep your questions coming. We're going to do a bit of a Q&A session in about 10 minutes time after I finish this, and also dealing with some of the questions from Standing for Truth that came through the other day. One Deadly Bite. It's a program that I do on venom, but in this bit we're not going to focus so much on the venom. We're more going to focus on the design of snakes, because I love snakes. I worked as a zookeeper for several years. It was an absolute joy to be able to work with these creatures, and it's still a fascination that I have today. I think they're absolutely beautiful. This is one of the North American corn snakes. Absolutely gorgeous, stunning colors. Beautiful creatures. We had great fun working with these things and designing enclosures and making sure that they were healthy and happy and everything else. All right, here's one of those North American garter snakes, and you can see that he's sticking his tongue out at you. He's not being rude. Most people will know that snakes use their tongue as part of their sense of smell. Now, they don't technically smell with their tongues. They technically smell with the same thing that you and I smell with, which is technically our brains. You see, when we smell, we have odor particles in the air which go up into the back of our nose to olfactory cells which send the information to our brain, and our brain then interprets those smells. However, a snake does things ever so slightly differently. But one thing you'll notice is, he's got a forked tongue. Now, most of you know that snakes have got a forked tongue. I wonder how many of you have asked the question before, why has a snake got a forked tongue? And something we like to remind people here in creation research is that if you don't ask the right questions, you'll never get the right answers. Here's a nice little diagram of a snake. You've got the Jacobson's organ, which is connected by a nerve to the brain. A snake sticks its tongue out, it waves its tongue around, it captures odor particles on the air, brings it back in, and it sticks it into that Jacobson's organ, part of the brain. And it sends those odor particles directly into its brain. Now, the Jacobson's organ and the snake's sense of smell is so spectacular. Researchers suggested that they can smell up to month-old smells, which is just wonderful. It's incredible. And the forked tongue is actually to give it a 3D picture of the smells around it. So one side of the fork is for one side of the Jacobson's organ, the other side is for the other side of the Jacobson's organ. It's actually able to build up a picture of smell in its surroundings. Absolutely incredible. Now here's Whisper, one of our snakes, who is currently munching on a lovely rat. Now, in today's world, snakes eat meat. And you may want to come back to the Q&A session to talk about how could snakes have survived in a pre-fallen world, why or when did venom kind of come about, and all these kind of questions. But the point we're making here is about the design of how a snake eats, because snakes are unable to chew. You can see here that Whisper is swallowing the rat whole, and the rat is several times larger than her head is under normal conditions. And of course, you ask most people, how do snakes manage to do this? And the number one answer is snakes dislocate their jaws. Well, they actually don't. Snakes don't dislocate their jaws. It's a bit of a misnomer. They don't actually have jaws for which to dislocate. What they do have, however, is a quadruped bone. And you will also be able to see down there by the chin that their chin is not actually joined by any kind of bone. Unlike our chin, we have a nice hard bony chin. The snakes don't. They're actually joined by a ligament, a flap of skin, which folds up into their mouth. And the quadruped bone is actually used as an extender. So rather than unhinging their bones, they simply are able to stretch their mouths really, really wide and stretch their bottom jaws out really, really wide as well. They essentially have an extending jaw. They don't dislocate it. But it's a great piece of design to allow snakes to swallow their food in one go, to actually swallow things whole, because snakes simply can't chew. And they can cope with some really rather sizable things as well. In fact, they can go to some really extremes. And this is one of your Australian rock pythons swallowing what is likely some type of wallaby marsupial there. Huge, great big creature. Of course, ask yourself this question. As remarkable as it is that the snake is swallowing this size of creature, if you were to shove that quantity of food down your throat, would you be able to breathe? Answer, no. So how is the snake breathing? Because this snake can, it can take sometimes a couple of hours to actually swallow a creature of this size whole. So how is the snake actually breathing? Well, the snake has another wonderful piece of design. You can see down there, he's got a little tube. When this snake opens its mouth at you, there it is a little bit clearer on one of our corn snakes. Oops. What it actually happens is this snake, this little tube is essentially a bypass valve, similar to if you have a bypass valve in plumbing or electrics. It actually runs down its throat, around the back of its head, and joins the lungs from the top. So when the snake is swallowing its huge amount of food, it's actually able to stick this little tube out of the side of its mouth, and it's able to continue breathing absolutely fine. And in fact, they will actually move their jaws sort of back and forth, pulling the creature or the food into its mouth. And it's able to do that with no issue at all, because it can stick this little tube out the side and carry on breathing. Now, you do have to ask the question, excuse me, how did these incredibly complex organisms evolve perfectly at the correct time? Because you see, if you have a snake, but he doesn't have the sense of smell, then he can't find his food. If you have a snake, but he has a sense of smell, but he doesn't have the brilliantly designed jaw system, he can find his food, but he can't eat it. If he has the sense of smell and he has the jaw system, but he doesn't have the breathing tube, then he can find his food, he can start to eat his food, but he can't actually, well, he'll die because he can't breathe halfway through. And I haven't even started talking about the fact that if you were to shove that amount of food in you, you would simply explode. So you need to have a stomach and a digestive system that's able to not only stretch the entire skin open, but also able to cope with that volume of food and digest that volume of food over a large period of time. See, all of these things have to be in place at the right time in order to work. In other words, design has nothing to do with time. Time simply destroys. Intelligence creates. It's got nothing to do with time, but everything to do with a process. You're looking for a process to design. I mean, you know this because of work, industry, right? Time is money. So what do? You sack the foreman you've got, you hire a foreman who's able to implement a better process, and therefore your creation gets done quicker and therefore gets done more efficiently. Not time, but process. How would you recognize a design if you saw one? I mean, we've been using examples of stone tools and rocks and hand axes, and you remember what our definition was from earlier when we were using this hand axe or this stone axe. A design is something that has properties that do not come from the materials that it's made of, therefore it's a design. Stone by itself does not carve itself into a beautiful axe. Stone by itself does not inset itself into wood that's carved beautifully so it holds comfortably in your hand. It does not get deerskin twine and twine it around so that the axe doesn't split. It doesn't get pine pitch that's mixed with beeswax and inserted into the gaps so that it holds the axe into place. This is by sure a design, and you can recognize designs, and now you're actually able to define it. A design is something that has properties that do not come from the materials that it's made of. A design has a designer. A designer is a creator, and you must pay the creator his due. Very briefly, as a side note, one deadly bite. Let's briefly deal with the topic of venom, because there's a misnomer today that venom is bad, and you can only, if you've ever been bitten by a snake, you probably would think that venom is bad for sure. No, venom isn't bad. Venom is a digestive system. We've got a brilliant new research that's going on where they're actually doing mass spec tests on venom and looking into the origin of venom as well. And one thing's for sure, it's a digestive mechanism. So your rattlesnake like this is using its venom to digest. Now, it just so happens when it injects it into a creature, it happens to kill it as well. So it's a good design which is being implemented in a bad way. It's a good design in the beginning, designed to digest, because you find lots of herbivores also have venom as well. Herbivore lizards will have mild forms of toxin, which is very similar to rattlesnake venom, and they are 100% vegetarian. So they only eat plants, they're herbivores, and you'll find they use their venom in order to be able to digest their food. So in the beginning, everything was very good. Venom was used to digest. Now it's being used to kill. It's a good design being used in a bad way. And you can see this example. Here's one of our green iguanas, and I used this example for our kids earlier because not only do green iguanas have wonderful, beautiful, sharp teeth that sink into your flesh, as I have experienced. So the point being that the only thing you can tell from the teeth of an animal is how an animal eats, not what an animal eats, because they are sharp, serrated, backward-pointing teeth in a 100% vegetarian creature. But both green iguanas and other lizards, like the bearded dragons, are actually all venomous. And they are predominantly, if not 100%, vegetarians. They use their venom for digesting. One deadly bite. Now, it's not from the snake. It's one good design that's actually gone wrong. If you want to know the real deadly bite, it's the one where Adam actually took a bite out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thereby cursing the world, and thereby meaning that many people now today are scared of snakes simply because they are very, very dangerous in today's world. The point that I made, how did all of this evolve, venom or otherwise, from nothing, without intelligence, all at the same or the correct time? Remember what evolution is? And evolution is anything that can happen by itself. Only natural processes are involved and no outside intelligence is required. What is a creation? A creation is anything that cannot happen by itself. The end result has properties that do not come from the original materials, and outside intelligence is always required. And a creation always proves someone who was not part of it, someone who was greater than it, actually made these materials do what it doesn't do by itself. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at evidence of a creation. Well, that just about brings us to the end of my little session that we talk about in terms of the evidence of design. I'm going to just escape like that, come back to the screen like this. Good stuff. Yeah, we're back. Lovely. We've still got some people with us. Thank you very much. That's great. Let's see if we've got any questions or any other points or anything else that's come up, and we can maybe move on to some of the standing for truth questions.
We've had no questions come in on anything so far. We have had a point. Well, we've had one point here from Marianne on Facebook. A guitar is not 100% wood, Joseph, since it needs vibrating strings made of something taut which vibrates.
That's very good. Yes. In fact, that's actually a good thing. We could even point that back to like the original strings, which made from like horsehair or something, which is itself has got excellent evidence of design. So maybe we'll update that to include that in the future.
There we go. And also, my dad is in the chat, and he said, "Great update on the Genesis film. Really stunning meerkat clip. Very exciting." Well, thank you very much for that, Dad. Right, that is all the stuff we've got in the chat here. So I think it's probably time to move on to some questions from
Standing for Truth. Yeah, so give you a bit of background for those who weren't there. We did a couple of programs of Standing for Truth on Monday and Tuesday this week, depending on where you are in the world, because it was different, obviously, if you're in Australia, doing about geology, the flood boundary, the history of geology, sedimentation, the theory and the principles behind it. We went through so many different stuff. But anyway, we had a huge amount of questions, which we obviously couldn't get through, even though we did like getting on for five hours worth of content, if not more. So great stuff. But let's go through some of those questions that perhaps we didn't get a chance.
Okay. I'll start off with a suggestion for us. This is coming from Lego Logos. Have you guys thought about experimenting with different water temperatures in your sediment experiments? As a diver, I know water separates into thermal clines. This should further contribute to layering. Could also induce shocks by bumping the equipment in various ways to simulate earthquakes or plate shifting. Put the machine on rollers, then push and rapidly stop whilst current is flowing. Just a thought.
It's a very, very good thought. And we have already been experimenting with some of those principles. In particular, if you think about it, the Earth is a globe. And so when you have a global flood, not only do you have things like tides, and do you have all these kind of factors, as well as currents, and as you rightly point out, different water temperatures, right? But they've also got the fact that the Earth is a spinning globe at the same time. So one of the things that we tried experimenting with is essentially a cylindrical strata machine where you put sediment in and you spin it round and you watch it as the sediment actually starts to fall. And you can imagine that on a much, much larger scale. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll actually see some video footage of some of these experiments that we put up a little while back. So that's the first thing, this kind of let's do experiments with these things under motion, whether it's rollers or spinning or anything like that. The idea of the different water temperature is a very interesting one. It could be complicated to implement it, but it's certainly on the right tracks of what we need to start doing next. So John is currently over in Jurassic Ark actually doing this kind of research, like literally right now as we're speaking, over in Jurassic Ark with these strata machines. And when I was over there a few years back, I started talking to Clem, who's one of our engineers, and he's a rocket scientist by trade, really, quite literally. And we started talking about some different ideas that we could implement in order to to actually have different currents moving in different directions. So multiple strata machines, if you like, at the same point coming together and layering one on top of the other. So we're thinking through these things, and implementing them can be quite complicated, and it's very expensive as well. So keep supporting us so we can keep trying these different things. But it always makes me laugh that when we were there, right, we were implementing a brand new pump, a Venturi pump. We kind of spent most of our time with these strata machines kind of shoveling in sand, and of course that's not great because you're not getting a nice consistent slower. You're just getting bits and pieces. So Clem had the great idea of recreating a Venturi pump, which basically blasts water up a little tube, sucks in all of the sand and the sediment around it, and pumps it into the strata machine that way. Great idea. Of course, the problem was when we started actually using this on our strata machine, we found that the water flow was just slightly too high and it was just completely pouring over the end. So we needed a way to regulate the flow. And me and Clem, me as a geologist and DIY kind of guy, him as an engineering expert, we went through so many different designs and complications, thinking through all different ways of designing this, and we ended up working out the best solution was an old bit of carpet that we attached to the end and just moved up and down. So sometimes the most eloquent solutions are the simplest solutions, but what that did is allow us to actually regulate the flow of the water. So we had a lot more control over the flow of the water. And that was our first step in this. First of all, we've got to regulate the flow, then we can regulate the motion of the water, and then the third step will be, let's see if we can regulate the temperature and actually get different temperatures going through perhaps a really, really deep strata machine so that we can actually create these experiments in the same way. So it's a very, very good idea. Thank you very much for the suggestion. Keep suggestions coming in like that because it does really help us. Sometimes it just gives us the little bit extra that we need of an idea. So keep the suggestions coming in. But yes, we're continuing to do this, continue to support us, and we'll hopefully have more reports on our strata machine soon. We want to implement that here in the UK as well, Lord willing, in the next couple of years or so. But Diane, any comments? Because you've probably seen it more recently than I have.
Yes, I have seen it in action since Clem's Venturi pump has been in action, and we have tried various ways of changing the flow. Most of the experiments these days are related to variations in flow, which you would have got in the flood, as Joseph said. It's not just the world is not just a passive container of water. It's moving all the time, and of course, in the flood with all the upheavals, the fountains of the Great Deep. You would have had lots of different flows happening at different times. And the interesting thing is that we're getting the most amazing formations with what looks like folding, with uplifts, even some things that are ascribed to metamorphic processes. That's processes that have happened after rock layers have been laid down and then something has changed it. And I haven't seen the rotary one going all that often. I did see it a couple of times, and the interesting thing is that as soon as it was allowed to go, so it was just a rotating like a tube that had been made into a circle. What do you call that? A torus, I think. Anyway, as soon as it was revved up and rotating at a smooth, regular rate, all of a sudden, these things that looked like landforms, hills, valleys, folding, just appeared, all from just the flowing water. We didn't do anything to obscure it. The idea of moving it to simulate earthquakes, and that's very interesting idea. It would require some pretty clever engineering. What we've got now is a few meters long. It's extremely heavy. But yes, if we could do that, I'm sure that would produce some even more interesting results. So thanks for those suggestions, and we look forward to sharing with you what we've found as we develop it.
Yeah, there's a few examples of the strata machines actually on our YouTube channel. So go back and check that. And I'm pretty sure there is a rotary one, a cylindrical one.
Yes, you can actually see the landforms just
it's
forming themselves
rotary
without
fluid
us manipulating, other than just getting it to rotate.
Rotary fluid, it's called on YouTube.
Yes.
So yeah, great stuff there. Go and check that out. It's well worth the watch. So great stuff from that. It looks like there's half a question coming from Neil, so we'll let you finish the question, Neil, before we answer that. But what have we got next, Sam? We've got about one or two more questions, and then we'll probably start to wrap up because it's getting towards the 2 hour mark.
This one I think will probably be a quick answer one. This is coming from the Freakster. Fossilized organisms are found in association with other fossils from coherent ecosystems, not violently transported and mixed with organisms from dissimilar environments. I'm getting a sense of deja vu here to an earlier point you made in the program.
Yes.
Indeed, yes. Well, I would certainly disagree with that, as well as most people who actually go out and dig up fossils would also disagree with that. And in fact, the scientists behind the what was it? It was the Tanis
facet,
North Dakota fossil, because I quote from the article here, which is indeed a quote of somebody else, one of the head researchers who actually dug there and researched there. The North Dakota fossil site is a chaotic jumble. Right, you remember the report that they had? It was fossil fish next to fossil turtles, with the fossil wood spikes slammed through them, with fossil wood pointing in the same direction, next to some dinosaurs. That is a chaotic jumble. It's not a nice, simple ecosystem. And that was something that I was taught when I was doing paleobiology in university. I was taught you've got to actually go out and look at the rocks and find and work out an ecosystem. And it just simply doesn't work. It's just a mess out there. So one of the things we do if you come with us down to the Jurassic coast is we will take you along Charmouth and we will point out all the fossil wood buried next to seashells, buried next to dinosaurs, buried next to swimming marine creatures. Land dinosaurs, by the way, all buried together, all showing evidence of being drowned, all showing evidence of being dumped in a massive flood deposit. So yeah, I'm afraid when you actually go out there and start looking at the evidence and you actually start digging the fossils up, one thing's for sure, it's a complete mess, and it's a chaotic mess at that.
Right. It appears Neil's question has materialized from the ether. He says, would the water from the fountains of the deep be hot, mixing with the cool rainwaters? I'll add on some another sort of extra bit of question as well. Would that possibly include volcanic activity? If so,
yeah, well, it comes down to these different ideas of what the fountains of the deep mean. Right? If it's subterranean water, you would certainly need some kind of tectonic activity in order to break it and push it towards the surface. And if it is basically the sea, the body of water that got separated on day 3, being forced to be pushed up, and the land sinks down and the water rushes over the land, that also requires massive amount of tectonic activity. And one thing we know about tectonic activity is it does produce a large amount of heat, whether it's in the form of volcanoes or so on and so forth. And you do need heat. You actually need heat in order to be able to move and make things more movable in terms of tectonic activity, in order to move stuff around and push stuff up onto the surface. So yeah, there would have likely been a mixture of hot and cold. Certainly not hot enough to kill out all of life, because life survived in the sea. It was only the land animals that actually went onto the Ark. So likely to have been warm, but there was also likely to have been several other factors that worked as condensing units in order to stop the heat issue from getting too much, basically at the same time. Any thoughts from you, Diane, or?
Well, there is hot water that comes out of the earth now, out of you get steam out of volcanoes. But But
Geysers are the
artesian
one.
water that you drill for is not necessarily hot. So that it would have been various temperatures depending on the process that actually caused it to rise up.
And a lot of the issue when people talk about the flood heat problem, everything like that, what you're essentially doing is using the Charles Lyell philosophy of taking the present and saying, if a global flood happened in today's world, you would have a massive problem with heat. And there's absolutely no denying that. But you've got to remember, when living in today's world, we're living in a post-flood world, right? So the very fact that we have volcanoes and tectonic activity close to the surface producing geysers and splits of the Earth's crust and so on and so forth is all the result of Noah's flood, not what it would have been like at the beginning of Noah's flood either. So you've got to try and bear all those things in mind when we're talking about all of these things and all these issues as well. Let's have one more question, Sam, from Standing for Truth, and then I think we should probably call it a day.
No worries. This one has come in from Ronnie Buchanan. Hope I'm saying that right. I always agree with 99% of what you guys say, but the way Mammoth's comment is designed for cold weather is refuted by the one that was cut from the ice. It had green grass in its mouth. Look at the orangutan coat, really similar to woolly mammoths. Love your ministry.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, it depends what you mean by cold climate, and it also depends what you mean by, is it designed for a warm climate? Okay, with the case of mammoths, one big difference you have between orangutans is the size of the animal. And the fact that they're mammoths and the fact that they're very large, there's a reason why the only elephants that have survived today in the tropical regions have very little to no hair. It's simply that if they did have a large amount of hair on such a large animal, they would overheat. Right, so you'll find that the very key to it is it being such a large animal, a large elephant, being covered in air implies that the climate is fairly cool. Now, I'm not talking about frozen tundra cool because, I mean, it's an elephant, essentially, and elephants eat a lot of food. So you're absolutely right. We do need to have an environment where you can actually survive if you are an elephant and if you are a large enough creature. And you're absolutely right. If you go down to the frozen tundra, you find the remains or the preserved remains of vast steppes, grasses, and you find this grass and flowers inside of the elephant's mouth, inside of the woolly mammoth's mouth. So it was certainly not cold enough to freeze everything, and the mammoths were thriving, and it would appear that they were thriving for a moderately short amount of time in terms of a few hundred years, and they were being pushed further and further north as the result of Noah's flood. Not Noah's flood, the waters, but the aftermath of Noah's flood, causing a unique condition which we refer to today as the Ice Age. You see, the Ice Age is a unique condition. It requires very, very hot water and very, very cold atmosphere. And as my old university professor, first-year university professor, who was an expert in ancient climatology, he said, if anybody tries to tell you, or rather I said to him, what caused the Ice Age? And he said, when you work it out, let me know. And he said, if anybody ever tries to tell you that they've worked out what caused the Ice Age, don't believe them, because we simply don't know, because you need a paradox. And if your main source of energy is coming from the sun, how do you get very hot waters with a very cold atmosphere? However, a global flood gives you those unique conditions. Again, tectonic activity, warm water, volcanic activity, ash in the upper atmosphere, warm water, and cold atmosphere in the poles. So you have a unique condition where your ice does not freeze over the water, but it actually freezes up on the land. And all of that evaporation of water goes up out into the atmosphere, comes down onto the land as ice. And this would have actually started relatively low down in the poles and progressed its way northwards, probably pushing these mammoths further up. So no, they weren't in the cold, as you imagine, the frozen kind of tundra that it is today. There was grass, there was flowers, they were able to survive, but yet it certainly was much cooler than what you would have considered a very good world before the erratic climates of after Noah's day. If you remember, Noah's flood was the first reference to major climate change. It's the first reference to cold and heat and the divisions between it. Job, which is regarded by many scholars as the oldest book in the Bible to have been first completed soon after the Tower of Babel and Noah's flood, refers to ice from the north and things like that. So you'll find that they're adapted for a cooler climate, but not a frozen climate, because nothing's particularly adapted for a frozen climate, because you do still need to eat, right? So adapted for a post-flood cooler climate for sure, and died very, very quickly and asphyxiated and frozen in the tundra, which shows that the Ice Age came on very, very quickly as well. Any comments from you, Diane, as a sort of a biologist?
Yes. Well, the fact that they were preserved with grass and stomach contents indicates that they were killed off catastrophically. So what you're seeing there is not really how they lived; it's how they died. So something catastrophic has buried them and preserved them. But the environment that they were living in before this happened was obviously warm enough to sustain a lot of vegetation, and they survived there. We don't know for how long, but probably not very long, until they were just rapidly killed off catastrophically. And so that's why we know that they were eating grass.
Great stuff. Great stuff. All right. I've just spotted a very quick question from Neil. So let's deal with that now. And that'll be our last ever question before we begin to round up for the evening. Where is it? I saw it. Oh, you've got it. Lovely. Would this process produce lots of sediment which buried creatures and plants? The answer is, in a sense, yes, because whatever tectonic process it was, presuming you're referring to the tectonic process in your previous question, that tectonic process would have been the process that pushed the water, whether it was subterranean water or whether it was seawater, and of course it would have all been mixed together at some by the end point anyway. It was that process which pushed the water up onto the land, and it's that process which would have caused the erosion. It's that process which would have swept all those creatures together, both land creatures with sea creatures, and it's that process then of the flowing water that actually deposits all of the sediment as well. If you remember from our strata machines experiments, and if you've seen the Standing for Truth program that we've done, I do a whole thing where I talk about size of deposits, right? And if you remember the point from the Jurassic Ark deposit, right, it covers most of northeast Australia actually, which it covers most of this deposit. And I made the point that for every cubic meter of material sediment you have deposited, you require 3 times that amount, or 3 cubic meters per cubic meter of sediment deposited to be eroded away. So you need a huge amount more sediment to be eroded away to actually deposit this down. So you'll find it's the water itself that is actually doing the eroding and the sweeping and the catching and the dumping and everything else, and this catastrophic burial. The tectonic work certainly was in play in terms of pushing stuff up and sweeping stuff over the land, but that was a mechanism by which it pushed the water onto the land rather than the tectonic activity itself. So any final comments from you, Diane?
Yes, well, we've recently had floods here in Australia. You've had them in England, and yes, flowing water does pick up anything that's in its path, but then when it slows down, it dumps it. So what we're seeing is the result of flowing water rather than the original tectonic activity, which would have made the water flow. But yes, sure. It's the flowing water is very, very powerful stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. You can really see the evidence of this in the world around us. So, yeah, great stuff. I think we should probably start to wrap it up there. It's getting late here, and it's been a very, very busy and long day. We'll be sort of back next week. We're doing something slightly different next week, as it's Easter. John is occupied, I'm occupied, we're doing all sorts of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a broadcast which has never been on YouTube before. It's a recording from, I think, last year or the year before. It's a special Easter series, so that will go out live on Friday, on Good Friday. Again, at the same time, 9 o'clock in the evening, but that will actually go out. One or two of us will probably probably be able to be around in order to keep an eye on the live chat and engage with you there. But essentially, it's a pre-record that's going to go out. However, we will be back to normal the week after that, and so we'll carry on with our topics. And we've actually finally started to get some guests lined up as well to do some stuff, so that should be really, really good as well. So we will briefly see you next week via the live chat, but do join us. It's a really, really important and very thought-provoking session that we'll be doing next week. It's well worth the listen, whether you can tune in live or not. And also, join us for the week after, where we'll be back again live properly, doing another topic and engaging with all of your questions. We'll probably try and perhaps do a special the next live thing, and then a Q&A afterwards. So that sounds like a good idea, but we'll get some brainstorm, get some ideas, and keep an eye out, of course, for updates on Sam's special project. So that's some really, really exciting
stuff. Our project. It's our project.
Yes, our project. That's some really exciting stuff there. I think that looks really, really good. So it's great that we've managed to get you the technology that you need, and let's get going on it. So any last words from anyone before we say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Please join us again.
Happy Easter.
Yeah. God bless everyone. We'll catch you next time, briefly with our Easter program, and then for good the week after. So we'll catch you later.